Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. There was a contest on Sunday that I thought I should go over, and if you missed it, it was what a lot of people considered to be maybe the best game this season in college basketball, as Michigan and the Wolverines go into Columbus and end up beating Ohio State by a final score of 92-87. And one thing I wanted to talk about with this game was that going in, I actually did think that in a season that has been dominated mostly by Gonzaga and Baylor, and there is no doubt how impressive those two teams have been, I think one thing that college basketball has kind of been missing so far this season is that one unique peak, I don't want to say prime time, but standalone game between two elite teams for everyone to see. And it's unfortunate because we should have gotten it earlier with Gonzaga and Baylor, and we know what happened. It got postponed due to COVID just before. But this was the first time this season where I was looking forward to a game between two standalone, really good teams. And without further ado, Michigan and Ohio State were really able to deliver on what the whole country wanted to see. And that was just a classic game between two teams that straight up hate each other, and two teams that are very good, and two teams that have a legitimate chance to make a deep, deep run during March Madness. And a lot of things I wanted to say about this game. And number one is this. I totally understand that over the last couple weeks on this podcast, I've been talking a lot, including last week, about Juwuan Howard and the job that he's been able to do so far since he's gotten to Ann Arbor and has become the head coach of the University of Michigan. But it's been really, really impressive. And I'll start off by saying this. I don't think the casual college basketball fan realizes just how hard it is to make the jump from the NBA to the college level when you don't have any prior experience as a college coach. I'm not talking about a Fred Hoiberg or a Billy Donovan who had experience in college prior to going to the NBA, goes to the NBA and comes back. And obviously Billy Donovan hasn't returned to college yet. If he ever would be, he would be falling under this category. But Juwuan Howard wasn't one of those guys. He was a guy like a Chris Mullin at St. John's or a Patrick Ewing at Georgetown, who their team has been struggling as of late. You also have Mike Dunleavy coming and coaching college. Guys like that a lot of times aren't necessarily bought all in to being a college basketball coach. Avery Johnson is another one that comes to mind who came down from the NBA, and it really just didn't work as he was the head coach of Alabama. But a lot of guys who come down from the NBA are in the mold of, okay, when I'm in the NBA, yeah, I'm coaching 4 or 5 months during the season, but at the same time, at least I have an off season to look forward to go on vacation with my family, go to the beach, go to the Bahamas, go to Mexico, do all that stuff. You are coaching professionals. But one thing a lot of people who come down from the NBA don't realize about being a college basketball coach is that it's a 24/7 kind of job, 365 days a year. There is always going to be opportunities to you to make your team better, and that is really, I think, what happened to Juwuan Howard. He has came over from the NBA ranks as a former assistant coach of the Miami Heat and has literally transformed this University of Michigan basketball program. And that's the other thing, is that a lot of people don't realize where exactly this Michigan basketball program was headed before Juwuan Howard had gotten there. And that is another, in addition to all of the great work he's done with the program in terms of comparing him to some of the other guys who have came down from the NBA level. Just from a winning games perspective, Juwuan Howard has done a significantly better job than Chris Mullin, Patrick Ewing, Mike Dunleavy, and Avery Johnson, and a lot of other guys who have tried to make that transition going from the NBA to college. But what I will say is this, is that Juwuan Howard, when he got the job at Michigan, not everything was looking good in front of him. Not everything was necessarily pointing his way. I think the success that Juwuan Howard has had at Michigan has made not only Michigan fans, but other fans across college basketball really forget about the state of the Michigan basketball program when Juwuan got here. The John Beilein departure was something that no University of Michigan basketball fan would have ever expected to happen. And Beilein was a great coach at Michigan, and he was bound, I think, to at least have interest from other spots. But at the same time, you just wouldn't necessarily expect a guy like that, a guy who has really done whatever he could to build this program, and a guy who, more importantly, had been at University of Michigan for such a long time, a guy who was getting pretty up there in age. I don't think anyone would have ever just expected John Beilein to bolt for the NBA. So when Michigan had to hire their new basketball coach, I think that was a decision that a lot of people were very curious to see what Ward Manuel, their athletic director, would do in terms of a guy to run their program. And one thing about Juwuan Howard was, he was a player at the University of Michigan, and he's familiar with the program, all that stuff, had played in the NBA. He is doing this successfully in a totally different way than John Beilein has. That's what I find crazy, is that literally in less than 2 years, Juwuan Howard has made the University of Michigan a destination where McDonald's All-Americans and NBA prospects coming out of high school want to go. And that was something that, even though when John Beilein was the coach, Michigan was very successful. That is something that Michigan basketball has not done out of recent memory. Michigan basketball under John Beilein was the program that would find the diamond in the rough kind of players and watch them succeed under their own eyes. That is exactly what happened with John Beilein at Michigan. And when you look at Juwuan Howard, he is literally gaining talent from every single direction. He took over University of Michigan basketball, and instantly, Isaiah Livers, who is currently on the team balling out, Xavier Simpson and John Teskey, holdovers from the Beilein era, Brandon Johns as well, all of those guys decided to stay in the program. And when you're a first-year head coach, especially a first-year head coach that is taking over a team that has some talent, that is the first step if you want to earn points with me. If you want to tell everyone in your locker room that, look, I understand I'm the new guy, but trust me, let me develop this program, let me build this program, and we're going to be successful. That is exactly what those players bought into at Michigan, and you wouldn't doubt to agree that it has worked out pretty well for their program. The same thing could be said about John Petty staying at Alabama to play for Nate Oates, Alex Reese as well, plenty of other guys. But when you're a new coach and you're able to keep your talent in-house, that is always the first step to being successful, and Juwuan Howard did that. I also really like how he's been able to take advantage of transfers and use those to his advantage. A lot of times when it comes to transfers, coaches will have trouble with their evaluation skills, and coaches will have trouble watching a guy like a Mike Smith come from Columbia, and okay, Juwan saw he averaged 16 or whatever points per game, and he just put up ridiculous numbers in the Ivy League. But a lot of times we watch that happen where a guy transfers up, and you could just tell the role of doing that same thing at the Power 6 level, it's just not going to work. It's too much. And what I love about Juwuan Howard is that he took a guy in Mike Smith and made him the ball handler for Michigan. He made them the team's lead ball handler, and kind of like that game manager point guard. He can make some threes, but he will only be taking threes when he is open and he thinks he could make the shot. The same thing could be said about Chaundi Brown, the transfer from Wake Forest. He's done a phenomenal job with this Michigan team, establishing himself as one of their most important players and a key contributor coming off the bench and providing big-time minutes for this Michigan squad. Last year, Chaundi Brown was at Wake Forest, and he was playing well, but I don't think he was ever this impactful, and I don't think Chaundi Brown would have played at Wake Forest in a more important game than he did yesterday with the Wolverines. And I just wanted to give, once again, for the second straight week on this show, I wanted to give Juwuan Howard so much credit for the job that he's been able to do so far with this University of Michigan program. And Hunter Dickinson, what else could you say about him? Another monster day yesterday, taking over for Michigan, beating up Kyle Young. And the fact that this kid is a freshman with his size and his skill, it's pretty ridiculous. And this is a guy that was ranked number 48 in his high school class. Yes, I said it right. Number 48. And Juwuan Howard and his staff were able to take this guy and notice something that a lot of other people in basketball couldn't notice, and that is that he could be a really good player. And he showed that on Sunday for the University of Michigan, going off against Ohio State. And Michigan's schedule coming up, it gets much tougher. They're going to have a game against Illinois. They're going to have a game against Iowa. But if they could go on the road back-to-back weekends and beat Wisconsin and beat Ohio State, coming off of the COVID pause, let's not forget, this University of Michigan team was off for weeks due to COVID. Could you imagine if they had never gotten that pause? Just how good this basketball team would be playing right now? I couldn't even imagine it either. And I do think what this win and what this game shows me is that I am absolutely willing to put Michigan in the conversation of teams that could win a national championship. I still have them at number 3 in my top 25 right now, just because Gonzaga and Baylor's resume are both a smidge better in terms of the number of quality wins that they have. But Michigan is right in that conversation, and they are a legit threat to win a national championship. I'm not going to rank them over Baylor or over Gonzaga, but what I will say is this. If Michigan played Baylor and if Michigan played Gonzaga, there would be a really good chance that they could win, because that is one heck of a basketball team that is playing some really good basketball right now. And Juwuan Howard and his staff deserve so much credit for the job that they've been able to do rebranding this University of Michigan program in such a short amount of time. And with this win, I do think that could just about lock up a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament for this Wolverine team. Juwuan Howard and his staff deserve so much credit.